talk about some interesting developments here and people I've been watching over the years. One of those is Jordan Maxwell, now approaching 80 years old, who has been public for many, many years talking about the real world, how things work, what's going on in the background. To a large extent, of course, I guess people need this kind of information to be woken up. So it does have a value to a certain degree, but none of the information provided by Maxwell is new, telling us where certain cultural things come from, and society is based on Saturn worship. And this is interesting because this is how the ancient secret societies were set up, who run the world. But the world is very different now, and all of these practices are mostly used to mind screw and blackmail the people involved in these organizations. They want to get people down to the basis practices, debauchery, child molestation, film people in homosexual and other acts so that they can then be blackmailed and held. So this is really how it works. The fact that this goes back to some belief system and, why our legal system is called a court and all these, who cares? The point is that in ancient times, as we do today, people carry on these words. What are they supposed to name things? So we do this with our space program. They're named against ancient god. Oh, we're going to read into that the NASA is based in Apollo. They're really Greek worshipers. Well, so what? They're not. I don't think people worship anything other than the money, baby. Who care? This is all hooked to money. You're not going to find any organization that is powerful today that isn't money-based. And if they want to control you more, we're the ancient pagan. It's nonsense. So all of this stuff, while interesting, and it does have some validity, well, this sign means this, and, Wall Street uses the bull and bear, and this goes... So what? What does that mean? People are involved in criminal activities because of corruption, and Maxwell really doesn't talk about this. He wants to talk about how much he's read about and connected to, and has multiple stories of contact with extraterrestrials and everything else. And when the extraterrestrials contacted him, they didn't give him training. They told him to read Charles Forte books. Because he wrote books on oddities. And this was his great education. The fact that Maxwell is 80 years old and really has achieved nothing other than a basic informational stream, which I guess has, as I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe he's a 2 in terms of, so we know this. So what? And what is he connected to? Well, he apparently is afraid to talk about anything of value. And of course, he won't talk about corruption. He won't talk about the things that will change the world. And he has absolutely no solutions to what can be done to change things. Now, if you really want to find a source of information that has value, they will have answers to what has come up as a problem. Not just telling you there's a problem. Now, telling you a problem is not necessarily, or really isn't, a great skill whatsoever. Everything that he's talked about is not something that's come from some secret source or from unusual or hidden texts. It's readily available everywhere. So, and this is what, in this day and age, I'm always amazed by people who say, where did I find that? I read it in a book that you can get on Amazon or ABE. That's how exclusive it is, and they're usually like $4. So your average book that's been out there that gives you fantastic information, including the tens of thousands of books that have been written about the biophysical, the occult sciences, etc., which are out there by the carloads. And since society doesn't give them a lot of value, you can even get them cheap. So what he's talking about with all these things are things that have been around for many, many years. And pretty much everything he talks about was well spoken about in the late 70s throughout the 80s in all alternative areas, and books were published on it. He is repeating a lot of that information. Now, it certainly, as I said, is interesting. Now, I found many things of what he speaks that are well known, and also he's come up with a lot of things that are incorrect because he hasn't done his research well. He also has the typical old man prejudices, recently calling the past President Obama a socialist communist because he doesn't seem to understand even the bigger picture of corruption and how all the political systems are one. I mean, what a childish way of describing someone, and I'm not a fan of Obama and never voted for him. He's another fake Democrat that wants to help everybody, and when they get in there, they do the same thing they did before. He followed George Bush's policies to the letter, and the old Democratic group, and the only thing they changed is the guy at the top. It's all the same people. His failed healthcare problem was set up by the Clinton administration. Rahm Emanuel, who was the person who was going to set up the same medical thing for the other Democrats, whomever would have got in there. He doesn't have the brains to set up anything different than that, nor the guts. He's a figurehead. So the whole idea is that this kind of ignoramus way of speaking, and him not even understanding the political system, and the fact that he's got all this nebulous information, this same old stuff about who cares, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. He refuses to have the courage and honor, even at his late age, to come out and talk about the corruption out there and what's going on and how people can change it. If he doesn't know how to change it, he's pretty ignorant and disconnected from anything other than his public library. I don't believe any of his ridiculous stories of meeting extraterrestrials, and what has he got to show for that? What does he have to show for meeting so-called extraterrestrials? He has a copy of Charles Forte's book, which you can get for $3.78 on ABE. You want to know what he knows? Read that book. That's what the extraterrestrials gave him. So he has all these stories. He never really made much money, wasn't connected anywhere, didn't come up with anything. He's just a person who's done library research from a relatively low understanding of the bigger picture, and who basically, like most people are, don't have the courage of their own convictions. They want to talk about stuff, and things were going to happen, and people met him. As far as I'm concerned, these people are worthless, and I have to really wonder, considering how the system is built, that, the system builds both sides. They build the loyal opposition. This was dramatized in the fantastic TV show from the 60s called The Prisoner with Patrick McGowan, who ultimately was the ultimate rebel in the system of this particular community he was imprisoned in. What did they do? Well, they made him the loyal opposition. They set up a political party to get him running against the other ones. And of course, he was empowered and almost won, like they almost win today all around the world. It's a 2 or 3% difference, which is mathematically unprovable if you were to go and recount them. That's the margin of error. So they always cover themselves that, well, it could not be. It's a 3% margin of error. So the whole idea is the same old story. So that's how the political system works. That's what we're living under. So he doesn't seem to get it, or doesn't get anything past his little going back into ancient history and so on. Of course you would. If you come from a particular tradition or cultural society, you're going to call yourself those kind of names. You're going to use that structure. What are you going to go back? What is your culture? What is your history? What are you going to name yourself? So if you come from a particular system, if you're black, you're going to use black or African type names. That's what you are. That's where you come from. Of course, that's not really true, but with anybody, because in this day and age, we're not our culture, but you're forced into it anyway. So you're going to, obviously, if you were to name something, or you had to come up for names for, let's say, model homes. You have 6 model homes. What are you going to do if they're built in Africa? Well, they're going to be named after African names or African gods. You're not going to name them after Swedish gods, and it's just the way it is. So the kind of simplicity of looking at that this is all and has this great effect, when the real effect, if anything, is gets down to the buckaroos, baby. It's all about the money. People don't do anything based on, oh, it's good because Jesus says it so. Yeah, that's nice. Here's $50. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I love this part of Jesus. So it's the same old thing with the Muslims, the Buddhists, and everything else. It's all tied to money. It's about personal survival. It has nothing to do with anything else than that, no matter what the cultural thing is. People are bought, they're bought cheaply, and everybody's worrying about taking care of their own ass and their own ass only, instead of grouping together for the greater good. Now, he doesn't talk about this either. He doesn't talk about anything that's interesting because it'll bore people. But, the bulls and the bears and Saturn and, it's the zodiac. Who cares? You have no answers. You produce no proof whatsoever. You don't have any pictures of extraterrestrials. You don't have any kind of advanced technology. They haven't given you any advanced training. As far as I'm concerned, you're living in a delusional world producing pretty low-level information that's been known for the last 50 to 60 years and certainly haven't done much on any level whatsoever, and you have absolutely no answers to change anything. So here we go again with more pundits, more talkers, and it sounds great. And of course, a lot of this is just historical, factual proof. Yes, ancient tribes worship the bull. Yes, that's right. And of course, those ancient tribes are here today, and of course, their temples are everywhere, but they're just hidden. Well, why are they hidden if it's so acceptable and there's so much power everywhere? So all of this and the fact that there is some good information there and that he has, but all of his years and now up to the age of 80, he skirts by all that because he doesn't have the courage to come out to things. He also has old world kind of silly ways of thinking, which further enslave his incorrect way of operating. So it's worthless. Unless someone has answers, producing information is virtually worthless. We need answers of how we change things. And he doesn't tap into that. He talks to extraterrestrials that give him nothing to assist mankind, whether it could be just a mental technique or how to build a simple little machine or process or even instructions of what to do to tap into higher consciousness levels. Zero has come from this person. There's nothing there. He knows nothing except which is basically can be found in history books, and all these connections and everything else are vague, nebulous, with no proof that anything has ever happened. They certainly are interesting stories, and I'm not really sure that any of it can be validated since he's gotten nothing from it. He didn't get a special book. He didn't get a rare book. He got Charles Forte's book from extraterrestrials to open his consciousness at that young age when he so-called met these people. But they certainly didn't help him financially. They didn't help him, here's a technique to do this so you can find gold or figure the stock market out. So what these people give you, and I hear this time and time again, and as long as contact with any kind of spirits, extraterrestrials, have no physical basis to them, it's worthless information. And this seems to be the commonplace with all contact, whether they're higher spirits, God forms, or extraterrestrials, is they refuse to help you in practical areas so that you can make changes in the world. You certainly can't do that as an individual, and you certainly can't do that as a poor individual. Nor do they have to make you the great industrialist. They certainly could assist you in bringing information or assisting a certain cash flow so you could live properly and get the information out. This never ever happens, and he's yet another example of lots of fascinating information that when you put all the pieces together make up a pretty crappy puzzle that is worthless.